to regale us with their experiences with their MOOC. I've heard nothing but good about it. So I appreciate you coming. Please feel free to get something to drink or something to eat while you're here. And I'm going to turn the time over to them. Thank you very much.
Well, we since you had this set up, we went ahead and thought about doing this, but maybe give you maybe 5 minutes just kind of look through it. And then we'll talk a little about some of the issues we encountered as we put this together and try to answer the question to MOOC or not to MOOC. I'm still thinking not, Craig's thinks too. Just by way of quick introduction, and then let Craig do most talking as he usually does. Craig has been teaching this as an honors class for effective religion or history, disease on history, for a long time. And so he came to me and said, look, it's really a history class. We're going to do it as a MOOC. Need to involve a historian, which I loosely resemble. And so I agreed to come on board. And it did take us a long time. And I think one of the messages we want to give to you all today is that if you're interested in doing something like this, it is a considerable time commitment. And so you have to kind of decide what's the reward for doing all of that. We'll try to mention some of those as we go along. But just really quickly, again, we hadn't planned this and don't want to take too much time doing this, but this is kind of a typical one of our units. We have 5 in place now. We're working on the 6th one. We've run it 2 times. And what we tried to do was make it less a comprehensive history course as it was a topical, modular kind of thing where we get students to look at a particular aspect of the subject at hand. In this case, as you're seeing the unit on disease, on religion, and tell just a little quick story from that subject, and then go from there to trying to get them to understand some larger concepts. And then, even though it's a history class, and so these modules here, I don't know that we want to play one of these completely, but you can, in fact, we won't play the video because there's just a guy talking. But we have a short video, and then connected to the video, we have a linked essay so that students can dig into it a little bit more deeply than the vignette allowed. And we tell them, look, these links are not necessarily anything we're recommending, just to introduce you to the rich resource on the web. And then, get you back here. This laptop's having a little trouble maneuvering in here. Let me go back. And then, even though it is a history course, we wanted the students to have a rich science experience with it, because we assumed, and we were right, as we've had participants, that most of them were interested in the history side or the culture side, not as much as in the science side. And so Craig also presented a featured disease and a science focus for each unit. So we picked a disease, a particular disease that seemed to be particularly influential in the case here in religion. Excuse me. So we have the science focus, quite a little discussion about germ theory. We had the featured disease, the bubonic plague. You can see here anyway, go through it. And then try to introduce some science terms. Then we gave them a lot of religion activities, a lot of activities. I lost everything. Forgive me. Get it back up here, maybe. Yeah, there we go. So that in each unit, they got a lot of history, but they also got a lot of science. And the whole underlying reason for doing this, I guess, the biggest reason is to blend the 2 disciplines. So we're particularly excited in our MOOC that it's interdisciplinary in every way you can think of. So with that, Craig, why don't you come up and take over a bit? If you want to poke around a little more on the site, that's good too.
Dangerous.
Dangerous. But it gives you an idea of what's there. And then, let me.
You keep talking, you're doing good.
Craig, I want you to talk about this, because one of the things that we were most concerned about was interactivity. And when we were planning the MOOC, we hadn't really thought that this would turn out to be that venue for an activity. I'm glad you can't hear that ugly guy. But we presented a short mystery, a history mystery we called it. And then we asked our students to go ahead and comment. And we had this turn into our most effective way to get students involved. And you can see from our last go around, students really got involved in answering the mystery. And then in fact, just this morning, we went up to Lampros and filmed a response to what the students said. So we're right in the middle, it seems, of the student discussions. And you'd be surprised. We have students from all over the world, Australians, Canadians, folks in the Middle East. We've had people in China. We just had a remarkable international response, even though the numbers haven't been maybe that big. We'll talk more about that. Anyway, go ahead, Craig. That turned out to be our most effective interactivity.
What do you want me to talk about? Syphilis?
Yeah.
So, yeah, if you do have an interest in this, I can just tell you a little bit about it. I've gone around and given this talk a lot in the last 20 years, Infectious Disease on History, and Gene's had me do it a few times. And every time I do it, it's not in a science venue, it's in a history venue, it's in a general public venue. And it's usually well received, and it's kind of interesting for people. And it's what made me think about doing the MOOC. So I kind of follow the MOOC world a little bit and know that most of the time when people do a MOOC, they're just taking one of their introductory courses and they just open it up to everybody. And sometimes that's good, sometimes it's not, but it's generally not very good. And so our idea was to take something that the general public might be interested in and then synthesize it into a really content-rich course that was very visual, and then get the feedback. So we've run it twice, and there were some things that I was interested in. So Gene and I have taught online since the very inception of online, when we had our own programmers on campus 20 years ago. And so I also wanted to experiment, so the MOOC offered me particularly a chance to experiment with doing a whole bunch of other stuff, like these embedded videos and just things that I hadn't been doing too much of. And then you realize, well, it's for everybody, so we wanted to do a few things, and our Gene can correct me on this, but I thought, well, it's a really interesting topic. Maybe if we get it out there, people will be interested in it, because I've always been interested. So you got to have kind of that personal investment. And I made Gene do it, and he just barely started speaking to me again because it was so much work. And it took us about 6 months to put all the content together, because this was a course that there was no content for. So if people had a course with content, it would be easier. But we got to experiment with it, and I had some other things in mind. So the MOOC allowed us to experiment in making an interdisciplinary course to send it out there. We've had almost 1,000 people take the course in the 2 times we've offered it. Actual staying with the course rate for a MOOC is less than 5%. We've been hovering around 50%, so we're 3 times the normal completion rate, which I think has been pretty good. If you could get 3 times your salary, that's pretty dang good. And one of the reasons why I think we got 3 times the completion rate we've had is that we did a couple things. We learned to keep the videos short. So we got lots of data on the first time we did it. We shortened up a few, and we got smarter about making them. We learned to do some things to keep the students who are in there engaged. Gene showed you the history mystery, which we do, and we do a bunch of stuff. We have all sorts of little learning stuff in there, like with the science glossary and so forth, and the essays, and you get real-time data on that. The other thing I was interested in, I thought, this is a perfect place to try and make an interdisciplinary class, learn how it works, get the feedback from it, And of course, one of our ulterior motives is to make this a Weber State course. So what better place to go try it? Our other motive was, we just both thought it was really interesting, and so everything's branded with Weber State, and it goes out there. So we've already had 1,000 people in 52 countries, at least probably about 20 countries that have really completed it, but 50-something countries that have at least looked and seen the Weber State logo and done some of that. How did we get this done? The thing that I learned more than anything else doing this course is that we have an awesome IT department that will, we took any idea and they made it happen. So, you know, I'm like, one daughter's watching it, she goes, God, you guys are like sitting in Machu Picchu. I said, yeah, well, of course, you know, they just green screened us, you know, we're sitting there, but we haven't had people say like, wow, I can't believe the location, you know, we're in the Vatican in one of the little talks and so forth, so it was pretty fun. But they also, if you watch the videos, they really, when those guys got done, it blew my mind because we had 2 cameras, so they cut back and forth, so it makes editing unbelievable, and they've got embedded pictures that come and go in there. I mean, these things look like Ken Burns videos, in my opinion. Yeah, when I saw the first one, there we are in Machu Picchu. Yeah, you never know the freeze frame is going to make you look like. So I've actually, after doing all this in my online classes, I've already made almost 20 videos to put in there. These guys knowing what we could do, and then, you know, we had an instructional design person help us. And so, because we wanted to look really professional and did a lot of cool stuff that I hadn't been doing. And then we kind of got the idea, some people gave us some feedback that this was pretty interesting course. And we made these videos, and they're all YouTube videos. One idea we had was that science teacher or history teachers in junior high and high school and even at universities can take our YouTube videos and use them if they want. And we started thinking about that, and then we contacted the Utah
the state office.
State Office of Education, showed them what we had, and they said, we will grant any teacher who completes this course 20 licensure points out of the 200 required every 5 years. So we already have teachers doing that. And then we had an idea about advertising Weber State, and if they complete the course, we mail them an awesome looking embossed Weber State, you completed the course. We've sent out about 100 of those already. People, if they pass the course, they get one of those, and it's on the wall in Australia and everywhere else. So that's been kind of fun. And then as we got more and more into this and build out more content, one thing that we got interested in, both having taught in honors, was thinking that this would be amenable to be the first online honors course. And we took that idea to honors, and we're going to teach it in the fall as the first online honors course. So, you know, we had to do things like, I mean, and this one has it too. We have learning objectives and we have 3 different assessments in each unit and a discussion area and so forth. But so it continues to evolve. So the one thing about to MOOC or not to MOOC is that it's a great place to experiment and put together, synthesize these courses, but it has been a fair amount of work. But like anything, you learn quite a bit, and then, you know, we've got all sorts of stuff in this thing. So readings, other books if they want to go farther. So there's a plethora of material. And then some more interesting things. This course, you'll see it probably maybe next year or the year after, I think, in a really interesting setting here at Weber State that will be announced fairly soon as far as courses to do this. So, which means that they're, general education people are looking at what we might call a double dip course, where you take a course, get gen ed credit in 2 areas. But I think the bottom line is, for me, it was fun to do it, but it was a lot of work. But I already had most of the stuff. So yeah, we told them, you know, like we want them we want it to be fun for people, so you can learn the vocabulary with crossword puzzles or Quizlets. I mean, there's all sorts of junk out there I didn't know. Sang just kept blasted in there, kept growing like the blob. Did I cover everything, Lee?
Well, yeah, a couple of things that Craig has said that I think are so important, and one of them is that our folks up in Atlantic Falls are unbelievable.
Oh, yeah.
We can't say enough. It's just stunning. And I'd say, even though we don't want to take a lot of time with something like this, let me get out of this. Just take 5 minutes and show you what Jim Godwin did, because we can take all the credit we want. I mean, we're responsible for the content and the scholarship and what have you, but in each and every one of these, let's do the Salem West Trials one. It's kind of interesting. Jim, yeah, it's good because it's Craig's side. But Jim, Craig's daughter, who's a microbiology graduate, lives back in Oklahoma right now, found a lot of visual material. I picked this one. It may not be a lot in it, Craig. But,
Yeah, I remember.
uh,
Notice
Jim-
the logo too, so everything's logo,
Everything's
wherever it goes.
Subtle
Yeah.
advertising.
And what Jim did, maybe this is a bad example, but he found a lot of, here we go. Yeah, Craig's talking about.
Ergot toxins, so that's the sclerotia on the wheat plant. She has been more challenging for Gene.
Yeah, it has. The technology.
But, so one of our goals was to try to make a MOOC that had a higher success rate, and then try to figure out what was the best features of MOOCs. And, you know, I mean, there are probably really two types. There's this kind that just appeals to the general public and people with interest in things, and then there's the ones specifically for particular content.
We really don't know, do we, Craig, who the people are who are doing this particularly, except some of them are surely well educated. We've had people
Oh, yeah.
using vocabulary even Craig doesn't know, and that's remarkable. And doing a lot of deep research and even lecturing us back and saying, well, you professors are nice guys, but let me fix you up where you're wrong. That's
Whoa.
yeah, I mean, and some of them have had some really excellent points. But while we're running this again, I don't know why that stopped a few minutes ago, but this is the kind of thing Jim did. And you can see the professional quality of it. I mean, even the sort of Ken Burns technique of focusing in a little bigger and out so that people's interest in what you're showing is more keen. And so again, here Craig's talking about how maybe this ergot poisoning contributed to the Salem witch trials. There are modern cases of people acting the very same way because they got ergot poisoning. And then again, accompanying these, we've got this linked essay, so we can dig a little deeper, go to the internet, figure things out a bit more completely than our friend Craig. Yeah, anyway, yeah, that's what I wanted to see, the kinds of things that Jim did. And again, notice the watermark. So one of Craig's, when he first approached me about this, one of his carrots was, you care about Weber, yeah. It's going to be good for Weber, and he really has one. Really good for Weber State. This place out there on the map, 30,000 people, and they never have heard of the place before. And so that's been a good thing. Which I guess, Craig, kind of leads us to the question of why do this? You might be saying, how much are you guys being paid for this? The answer, this meeting and a free cookie and a gift from Colleen. Yeah, I mean, there's no reward in it that way. So it's a labor of love if you care about your subject, as you know Craig does, and I do. You care about Weber, it's a great way to
Hey, got the same shirt. All right.
We only have 4 shirts. I didn't want to print that out, Craig. We only have 4 shirts.
I only have 2.
He has 4, but there are 2 just alike.
So there, you can see the end of the video and everything like that. And
they're very careful about copyright,
yeah.
all that kind of stuff. So
We've got data that the first time we taught it, we had 700 students who at least stuck their foot in it, and probably about 400 who really went after it, and about 15% who finished or at least requested the certificate.
Yeah.
And we got data, we got a lot of data. You can get data off the YouTube about all the YouTube videos we made, and we had 17,000 downloads of the videos the first time we did it. So,
Craig
and
mentioned.
any video that was about 6 minutes or less got watched at 95%. You know,
Yeah, and
pretty
I
much
wanted
watched
to-
the whole thing.
I want to underline that point that Craig made a little bit earlier. We learned the hard way after the first run through that we had, our introductory videos were 15, 16, 17 minutes. And we had data that only a handful were making it 5 minutes in. And so we went back and shot them all over again, so they were very brief. And that's one lesson we learned that's really important. In the world we live in, let's face it, people aren't just going to sit and listen to a couple of old professors yakking for 15, 16 minutes. Even though we beta tested with colleagues and family, and this and that, oh yeah, you guys are great, yeah, I was really interested. When it actually hit the web, people weren't able to sit through the whole thing. So, yeah, if you decide to do this, one lesson that's high on my list of things to do is keep it short. Keep it short.
Yeah, the other thing I learned, like I say, I've incorporated almost everything we've learned in this in my online classes, so, yeah, it was really awesome. In fact, I could probably, after doing this MOOC a couple times, talk about the best practices of making an online class, even though we've been doing it for years, you know, because I think partly because our audience was so different that, you know, the students, they're forced to watch 17 minutes of us, but
They won't do
general
it in their
public,
living room.
not.
This is something else we learned that kind of happened by accident. We were sitting in one of our early meetings over lunch, and I don't remember, Craig, I guess it was I had kind of had this notion that we could have these introductions be conversations, and that worked pretty well. In fact, and then, as Craig pointed out, we reshot these. They had 2 cameras, so they could zero in on one of the others of us. But we had those conversations and asking each other questions, and it worked really well. And I think that helped people sit through it as well, because they weren't looking at the 2 of us and just somebody yakking for 17 or 18 minutes. Instead, it was a couple of guys having an actual conversation. And later, and this was Craig's idea, later, before the second iteration, these had been successful enough that we decided that we needed to shoot some video. What were those on the science focus? On the science focus, right, Craig?
Yeah.
And so we thought that the conversation was so successful, even though I didn't know straight up from anything he was going to talk about during the science focus. Where are those, Craig? There it is. Yeah. That we shot a video for each of these, and we decided again that the conversation had been so successful in the intros that we shot these as me kind of interviewing Craig about the science issues on the table. And we thought this was very successful. Which brings up again one of the to-dos, and that is that if you have a multidisciplinary idea for MOOC, we think that that's great. And that's one of the reasons I hope to do this, because I love to think about how we can blend our 2 disciplines rather than just have it be a science course or a history course. This is real science. I learned a lot. In fact, I just came back from a long field trip with, took some students up to the Battle of Little Bighorn and found out myself teaching them a lot of science that, a year ago I had quoted. So I learned a lot from Craig. I don't think he learned anything from me except he hoped I brushed my teeth every morning before we shot these videos. But
Personal hygiene.
Personal hygiene. So, what else, Craig, did we learn that is important? Right, trial and error or something like that. But anyway, this 2-camera thing really is nice, as you can see them using that in this iteration. So when Craig's answering one of my questions, they zero writing on him. It was a learning experience. If anything, if you're thinking about this, we understand that Sitzman, what's her first name? Kat, yeah, is doing one right now on her own, and it'll be interesting to see how she comes up with it. And as Craig mentioned, most of these that are out there are just somebody putting her course out on the internet. This is different from that because, as you can see, what we're doing here, this in disciplinary. It'd be interesting to see in the fall when we do the honors version of it, how it works as an interdisciplinary course in honors. But anyway, a couple of examples of some things we've learned. I guess on the side of whether the whole topic of to MOOC or not to MOOC was already brought up, you better be ready to spend some serious time. I mean, it's really took a long time. And we worked really hard on it, and it took much time together and much time on our own, working back and forth to provide one another with the kinds of content. The folks at Canvas right away were impressed with the content, I guess. Craig, my sense is, I think yours was, that ours is much more content rich than the typical MOOC. So maybe this is a good example for you to consider if you're thinking about it.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
In your course, you said it's about 15% completion. Do you actually do it like a regular course, like start and end time?
Yeah,
Start and end days?
good question. Let me talk about that a bit. In our early thinking, we thought we just have it running all the time. But then the more we talked, and particularly the people in Lampros and the Canvas people, they said it's better if the participants feel like the professors are actually involved.
Okay.
And so we have run it twice, 2 5-week iterations. We just finished the second one on whatever, Monday yesterday. And then we came in every Monday, and in this case it's been Tuesday because of Craig's schedule, and filmed a response to the interaction. I can even show you one of those. They're kind of embarrassing. But I'll show you one of those. I won't give you the sound. You can just watch us stumbling around while it runs. But the answer to your question being that we decided that we needed to run it as a course in that sense, if that makes any sense. We can go down here if I can find the response.
How much grading was involved?
Huh?
How much grading was involved?
I set it up so it's
Yeah,
self-grading.
it's all self-graded.
Okay.
When we do the
So-
honors version, of course, there's going to have to
Yeah.
be some serious grading. Let's see if I can find this one.
Yeah, so they have some a test for each unit that they take that's got about 30 questions. Part of it's science, part of it history, from everything. They have to get 70% on that
So it's multiple choice.
to get the certificate and complete all those. Plus, they have to make a response on the history mystery, and we monitor that. So for the MOOC, we do leave it open the whole semester. We run it for the certificates, so I think the completion rate's probably higher, but we leave it open so that they can access the content. We haven't had too many public ed teachers take it yet. It's fairly new development, but we're going to run it twice in the summer for public ed teachers. And depending on how that goes, I'm going to probably have it be a revenue generator.
We're trying to figure out how to reach out to other states as well. We haven't done much with that because Lonnie Campbell and Sri Almalani retired in December, and he was kind of the guru that got it to our state office. And we're trying to think how we can get other states to similarly to be interested in the credit. You can see here, Craig has 3 lives that he leads all the time. I think he's cloned himself in his lab. But so I took it upon myself. I went in to each of the discussions and participated a bit in the discussions. You can see here I've answered somebody who made some important points, so that they had a feeling we were involved as it was running. And that, again, was counter to our original intent, which was just to let it run all the time, be all self-graded. Anyway, I wanted to get to kind of see this. I don't know if we'll... we shot one of these this morning to go with last week's set of discussions. And what we did here, we got a lot of help from the folks up in Lampros on this as well, was to look at all their comments, and then Craig and I went ahead and filmed a response, kind of an ad hoc conversation about the things they've done. And I don't know if it's going to
Maybe I click on that little button over under the two, above the 2.
Okay, it just says there's nothing there, it says 0, 0. So I don't know if it's there. But anyway, we filmed a 6 or 7 minute response in which we summarized briefly what the participants had said and answered some questions. For example, this morning, the issue was about syphilis and where it originated. And the standard history book tells you, oh, it originated in the Americas, and the folks that came with Columbus brought it back, and it spread all across the Mediterranean within a year or two. And so we asked them to consider that issue. Is that really true? And so we spent 7 minutes this morning talking about the evidence that syphilis and yaws and some other spirochete diseases may have been present in the old world, and perhaps when the Europeans came back with the Indian version, that mixed with the, what do you call it,
Lateral gene transfer.
lateral gene transfer, and became a more virulent form of syphilis that we know today. And we had some fun earlier. Craig did a whole unit on how syphilis impacted the monarchies of Europe, so they already had some sense of that. I don't know why this is.
I think they probably shut him off after the, you have to look at the last one.
Hate to do that, that's pretty bad. Maybe he's already posted the one we did this morning, Craig. Anyway, the answer, long answer to your question is we decided we wanted it to be
Yeah.
periodized, and we'd be involved as heavily as we could during the running of it.
So the other thing we've learned is, since that is, we're a Canvas institution, but Canvas may not be the best place to put a MOOC. So over the summer, we're going to investigate that. Canvas doesn't have as wide a following, nor as wide a, I don't know, publicized as some of the other delivery systems. So we're going to investigate that. People have told us that there are other delivery systems that we could migrate to that will enhance it quite a bit as far as the number we take it.
So I had a question kind of related to that. In terms of, is that how you let people know? Is you just put this on as a Canvas course?
So we never advertise it. Canvas on their, if you just go to canvas.net, Gene did that, then you would see they have all their MOOCs on there, their free courses, and you just scroll down, and each one has there's like 3 across, and then there's ours is on there. And then you just click on that course, it says enroll now. And then you enroll and away you go. So we've never advertised anything about anything, just the Canvas. It's just been sitting on there. So that's one thing we thought about. So one thing we're thinking about is that we found out Canvas isn't maybe the best place, but we can deliver it through Canvas.
We're not sure what university policy is about that either. So
Yeah, so that's kind of out of our bailiwick, but, and we haven't advertised it to the school teachers, but I've done a lot of stuff with school teachers, and it's going to be big. And I think most states will pick up on this. They're starving for interesting things, particularly over in the social science arena.
Yeah, I don't see the one we did today, Craig. And you're right, the others may already been shut down. But while I was looking for that, I think you've noticed that some of these people take this very seriously. This woman, for example,
Yeah, we can get references.
done an amazing job, and very, very polite. Nobody's been insulting to us or anything like that, but this one particularly has done a lot of research, and she's responded and really understood this subject very, very well. And she has footnotes and sources that she's getting her information. So we have people in Australia and Canada and other places say, well, gosh, this hasn't been our experience when we were talking about the effect of disease on the Aboriginal populations. This woman from Australia came on and said, let me tell you about our experience in Australia and what happened here. And so it was the international aspect of it was really quite fascinating. That you don't get at Weber. I mean, you get international students, but you don't get people sitting in their living rooms in, Perth, Australia, dealing with the subject matter. So it's pretty interesting. And notice this woman. I mean, here she found an article that's intriguing to her. And so it's been remarkable that way as well. I think it's fair to say, Craig, if we can be honest with this bunch, that we've been a little disappointed in Canvas in the sense that we have a feeling that if it had gone out on another learning platform, we might have had a better response. This is kind of interesting, I won't turn the sound up, but if you look at my kisser for a minute, we kept these little questions about syphilis down, or other diseases down, or history down in 30 seconds. But a couple of people picked up on this here and were a little bit offended by it. So it's interesting how people pick up. You mean that the Indians deliberately gave syphilis to the Europeans? And so we had to watch for things like that. And I came back this morning and said, no, we're saying that that's something to read in history books. That in exchange for measles and smallpox, the Indians gave the Europeans syphilis. Perhaps got even.
Trade you, yeah.
What else, Greg?
I think that covers it.
Yeah.
It's been I mean, the other thing that you got to think about at Weber State is this class, and this idea has been ruminating around with me for a long time. Gene helped facilitate. Would have never gone through curriculum,
Never.
you know, except in honors, which is where we're teaching it. But you know, we wanted to really put out some effort, and I think for this particular kind of course, you know, now when you've got this, it's just not an idea. It's a, you know, really pretty awesome. All the stuff that's in there, and then people can see more of the value of an interdisciplinary course. And we even have data from, you know, we have student evaluations from hundreds of students already. And we have all sorts of feedback, and we fine-tuned it. It'll be 4 times before we teach it on campus, and it's got people enthused. So I think that was a little bit of the behind, you know, kind of part of my thinking was to use this, you know, for all the reasons Gene said, more to really try something out that I don't, you know, it's not really cutting edge, but on our campus I think it's fairly novel. It's a place to do novel things. And I've talked already with a couple other faculty members, one about a literature course that's pretty crazy, and one about an engineering course, since they've seen this kind of thing. So.
What about Voss's idea, you worth mentioning, that kind of spun from this was the idea of how has disease turned up in literature. We're doing again about how it has influenced art and literature, but Mike Voss is thinking about teaming up with Craig. Think of all the literature you've read that's where disease plays a big role, and be very interesting. It makes the science and the literature in that respect. So a lot of great ideas for cross-disciplinary. I know, Colleen, you and I go way back in TLF, and one of the big initiatives going back decades is to foster multidisciplinary work on campus. And let's face it, it doesn't happen very often, does it? This is a great opportunity for that. So.
Do you think that this will perhaps impact Gen Ed? Because I know that Gen Ed is, there's a movement, I guess, to look at.
We're going to submit it when, so there's a movement to do those WSU designation courses, 5-year experiment,
Okay.
to make, like, you kind of call them a double dip course, where you take the course. The credit hours could be 3 to 6. I don't know. That hasn't been worked out, but.
Okay.
But take 2 Gen Ed disciplines and meld them into one, so a student takes a 4-hour course and fills Gen Ed in science and social science, freeing up some hours for other kinds of things that is not an option since we went to semesters. And, we didn't really make this with that in mind, but as we were making it, we heard wind of that idea and did some extra stuff in here to make that a possibility. And we probably have a little bit more to do in here, but in honors, it allows us then to try and embed both the science Gen Ed and the social science Gen Ed, which we've done. We're going to teach that actually as a social science Gen Ed course in honors, and give them a big injection of science ideas. So, yeah, I think, and then you've got to think too that, we've only had 2 growth areas in the last 10 years. We had the same number of students that come to our campus as they did 10 years ago in Ogden. It's never changed, even the only reason it looks like it changed is we cut down on parking spaces all the time. The places we've grown have been online at Davis. And online has the most growth, so to look at courses like this, where you've got, you know, it takes time to make a content-rich experience, but then you think about our students, and particularly gen ed students. My sense is that a social science student who takes this, all of a sudden gets some science and gets interested in a few things, and so I even view it as kind of a recruiting tool for science. You know, you hear that all the time. Well, yeah, I'm history, that's kind of what I know, but you know, then they say, hey, I got some science or something else, you know, that got me interested. So I see that working across all the disciplines. So I think this is the kind of thing that can easily happen on our campus. I mean, this place is full of creative people. And as Gene said, you know, it's so far beyond me it was okay for me to have the ideas, but to actually go make the videos and do everything else was like, forget it. I'm not going to learn that. I don't want to learn any of that. And these guys did it.
They did it.
And they're saying, hey, we can do it, but we can't supply any content. And then once we started showing them, you know, working on what we wanted to do, so.
Oh, yeah, they're great.
Yeah, if I could emphasize anything for you all, if you're thinking about this, it is don't be afraid of the tech side. Because initially, when Craig first started talking to me about doing this, that was my biggest fear. I'm not tech stupid, but I'm not tech savvy either. I'm somewhere in the middle, and I thought, there's no bloody way I'm not going to be able to put together a vote. Well, we didn't put it together. We supplied the content, and they did it. They did it, and they did it amazingly well. The team up there was remarkable. I can't overstate it. It was just stunning.
So I demo this on our students. I have my senior microbiology students, some who take my readings course and stuff. I make them, I give them the option. I have the last couple of times to take this course and complete it, you know, get 70% to get their credit, but also to write a critique of everything. And it's been good. I get critiques on a few things, and I've learned, you know, a fair amount from them. And actually, one thing we learned, the very first critique I got, our navigation system was not intuitive to students, even though we thought it was. And so we went in and talked with the instructional people and revised the navigation. So it was, and so I've changed that in my other courses too, but I thought, well, that's pretty interesting. You know, I tested on a couple of these students, and the navigation thing kind of threw them off. But the other thing I've got from the students is, man, you know, I wish we would have had stuff like this in Gen Ed. This was, so I guess, you know, there's a place for it.
Another kudo for the tech people. I pulled this one up for a particular reason. You can see the kinds of enhancement Jim Godwin's able to do. But I've had students say to me, and now Craig has, man, what a great looking lab there. Well, it's green, it's a big wall. And the funny thing about this lab, they tell us, is that the picture of the lab, there's a guy standing over here. And
Take him out.
Yeah, they took him out of the picture. And how in the world? Yeah, he said that the photograph they liked the best of the lab was this particular one, but there was a guy standing there, and they didn't want to have Craig talking about it, just a guy standing behind him. And they took him out of the picture. So.
Oh, make it keep going and see if we
Yeah, I
can
don't
see
know
where.
what happened. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, there was a guy standing there somewhere. How in the world they could do something like that? That's a great shot of Craig. That's how
Yeah, the freeze frame's pretty grotesque. I don't recommend it unless you have a strong stomach.
That's how he looks most of the time.
So did you guys have to find all the like pictures and stuff, or
They'd helped us with it, and then I have a daughter who's got a master's degree in microbiology, but her husband's going to grad school, so she has some time, so I haven't sicked her on it. But they're pretty good. They're doing it all for me now, like all the videos I'm doing in my other two introductory online courses in micro. They've had some student help just finding, you know, ones, and They just listen to it once and write down a few things. And then I think, well, that's even better because the students are kind of, you know, their student aides are looking for stuff that they think's interesting, and then they're putting it in there, so.
Yeah, I mean, Craig even managed to look like he knew what he was talking about sometimes here. I will say this to you, early on, Craig wasn't, honestly, I'm handing him a compliment here, as nervous as I was. They do have teleprompters. They have a system, you can use those, that, so you can stand there and read. But I tried that early on, I mean, Craig was doing his the way you see, and it's much more effective. The students feel like you're being conversational. And so we just spend our time making sure we really understood the subject, and then we talk for 5 or 6 minutes. And then the trouble is occasionally you make a mistake, and you say something that you wish you didn't, but that's okay. The students didn't seem to mind any of that too much. I mean, occasionally, once again, one of them would point out, you guys said this and that, I'm not sure I agree with you. But this sort of extemporaneous struck us as the best way to manage this. When Craig did it from the start, I tried the other way a couple of times. So you got to know your stuff. And again, in Craig's case, he knows his stuff here. I really did. I had to do a lot of reading and a lot of study in order to be able to talk halfway intelligently. Well, let's make it a quarterly intelligently.
See, yeah, these guys are so awesome, man.
Right.
If you ever listen to this, like, I
Here's
forget how.
talking about bad food. They got tainted fish. And here they got pictures of fish. Just amazing.
Anyway.
Go ahead.
Nah.
Questions, comments, anything else?
That's our story.
Anything else you'd like to see here? This is trying to make it smaller again. You get a picture. I mean, we didn't already be able to show you a part of this. It's interesting, just while I'm telling you this. You know how old Sacagawea was when she was with Lewis and Clark? How old do you think that woman is in the picture? 35. She was 14, maybe. They always show her as an old lady for some reason. Kind of an old lady. I wish I was 30, 40. But that's it.
So how would a person find this if they didn't know about it?
That's the thing, so
This thing.
we don't know anything about that. That's kind of what we're investigating now, because people would have to go to canvas.net and see it on there on their free course offering. There's probably 40 on there.
Plus,
So we-
you can stumble onto it through YouTube. Because if you're out there
Okay.
messing around on YouTube, a lot of our videos pop up, and then they see them there, and then they find it. But we really don't know. I mean, Craig's right, we don't know what's going on there, and it's something we need to investigate.
Yeah, I was kind of, we were hoping that maybe we were just going to throw it out there on Canvas the first time. We were hoping maybe we'd get 50 or 100 people who signed up, and we kind of recruited so that we could get about 50. And then we had, hundreds. And this last time, but we're probably around 400 who got into it. I think initially a lot of people just click on stuff, and look at it for a couple minutes and decide. And this time, we got about 350 or maybe closer to 400, but then we got this group's been, I would think maybe our completion rate will be even higher. And that's all we ever heard from everybody is like, look, there's no reason to do this because there are people who try this, they're telling us like 5% is really good and 1 or 2% completion rate is kind of normal, and most people don't stick with it. And so that's why we tried to do a whole bunch of stuff like this to try and get them to stick with it. And if you saw the certificates, they look like the graduation certificates. I thought that was a pretty cool idea. And we mailed them all over the place. So anyway, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Anyway, so I don't know, we're still learning on it.
If
And,
you've ever
and
taken-
there's, like the instructional design people and other people now want to use it to do some kinds of instructional research because it's got some different things.
You had a question?
Yeah, if you've ever taken a MOOC from Canvas, then they will actually advertise other MOOCs to you.
Okay.
So I did take one time, and so I get
I
advertisements
didn't know
of
that.
MOOCs when they're developed and they come out and their classes are ready to start, so you can sign up.
Since you've been involved, do you know how, I had no idea because we haven't talked how many companies are out there doing this? There's got to be a lot of them, because we asked, why would Canvas do this? Because they don't make any money on it either. And the answer we got was they have to be competitive with the other learning management platforms.
Yeah.
I've heard things like, I think it's Merlin.
Yeah.
Those others are very, Coursera.
There's several big ones.
Are quite big.
Yeah.
But the nice thing about Canvas is that it is open source. I don't know about the others, but that's one of the things that like, I've heard the IT people say that, you know, they have a lot of flexibility in how they do the courses.
Yeah, we don't know, I mean, we're not looking to get, a couple thousand people, but I think once we get over in the teacher end of thing, then it probably won't matter.
1,500 seems to be a pretty good.
Yeah, it surprised us, And the number of YouTube downloads, it's gotta be, we're getting around 30,000 now. Yeah.
Just might interest you are thinking about the honors class. We initially went to Judy with the idea that it would be the first honors online class. Then we decided and talked with her about making it still a hybrid course. So what we do is meet with the honors students every other week and then send them to the MOOC for their content. And we'll use our regular MOOC for that rather than design it all over again as a course. We'll just use the regular MOOC. Only in their cases, they're going to have to do this stuff for real. They're going to have to write essays, and write a paper, and take the quiz, and do it for real. So we're going to see how that runs. We may decide that we should have rebuilt the course for honors, for a classroom application, or even a hybrid application. But we're going to try to use it as it is this time around and let them kind of experience the MOOC themselves for real. So that's kind of how we're doing it. Yeah, for some reason these responses we shot are gone. Craig, I guess they leave them
I
up.
think they just leave them up for the few days.
Which is good for
Thank
us
goodness.
because they're embarrassing. Yeah, we really made these very ad hoc, like the one we shot today. When it ended, Craig was picking his nose and I was taking a shot at Pepsi. Other times the phone went off.
So the one thing I would say is, more than anything else, Gene's been my buddy for a long time, and we just had a lot of fun.
We did.
I mean, it's been work, but it's been a lot of fun and doing it. And I mean, we're already I'm talking about it, and Gene's like whining about it. We're talking about doing a whole different one. So we hope to have a new one out by about a year from now.
Craig, as you know, is a food scientist, and there's a lot of interest in the history of food and everything about putting on the history of food. Even though National Geographic just did a big year-long series on food, but that just gives some source. Let me mention real quickly, if you're interested at all in our source material, despite what we're saying about, whoa, isn't this really novel and wonderful, there is a lot of stuff out there on this. But what we discovered is it's almost all done by the scientists. So all of our suggested readings and all the materials are by microbiologists pretty much. And historians, in fact, we had a history of mystery here. Yeah, here it is. In fact, this one right here, where we asked them, well, why is it that when you pick up your usual history book, I won't turn up the sound, but I'm asking them, and I'll show you the better text version below. We asked them, why do historians tend to neglect the effects of disease on history? We had a wonderful discussion with them about that. So, and it is true. I mean, let me give you an example of that, just not to prolong our meeting here, but an anecdote. The great book on the Lewis and Clark expedition is Undaunted Courage by Stephen Ambrose. And I've read the book twice now because I read it a second time for the sake of our course here to write the essay on Lewis and Clark. He mentions disease in the entire book 6 times. 6 times in the book, yay thick. And Craig can tell you, was disease a major part of the Lewis and Clark story? Answer, that's an understatement. So historians do, they tend to, one of my students, in fact, one of our students here, I was thinking it was talking to a student, one of ours here said, it's like the weather, it's always there, but historians don't spend much time talking about the weather either. But, and weather can have an enormous effect on the course of history, but in the case of disease, it's amazing how neglected it is. And just real quick on the Ambrose thing, he's got a whole thing about how sad the state of the Northwest Indians is today, and he went through 4 or 5 paragraphs of how sad it is. And in a half a sentence mentioned, mostly because of disease. You're like, yeah, so where's the story here? Anyway, unless you have other questions, that's, my mind's exhausted. Greg has another meeting to go to as usual.
Well, thank you so much for coming.
Hey, there you go, Kate.